Hi, this is part 1 of the Chapter 1 lecture videos. First, a disclaimer. You are responsible for reading the book. I will go over main points in videos, but just because it didn't make it to a video does not mean it won't be on a test or a quiz. I would say 99% of what's tested in quizzes is going to be on the video. That's just to cover me if I forget something. So, Chapter 1, Picturing Distributions with Graphs. Individuals. An individual is a person or object that we collect information about. And I want to compare that to the word variable. A variable is a characteristic of an individual. Values of variable may vary for different individuals. So I might look at college students. Those are my individuals. Age would be a variable. Height would be a variable. Race would be a variable, something that describes the individual. So please note those ideas. So examples: height, weight, color, city of birth. Those are all variables. So in general, we say there are two types of variables. Usually they fall into one of these two categories. Sometimes it's a little iffy. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The first type is called categorical. And these variables, they place an individual into one of several groups or categories. I'll give you an example in a second. Quantitative, they take numerical values for which arithmetic operations such as adding and averaging make sense. They generally use units like feet, pounds, or whatever. Now, really careful. Sometimes categorical variables can be numerical. We might put things into groups, group 1, group 2, group 3. Just because we name them 1, 2, and 3 does not mean they are numerical. So be careful of that. Generally, categorical variables don't have units, and averages, adding, etc. math doesn't make sense. And so those are things to check. If you're not sure if it's categorical or quantitative, check. Could I think of a reason why I might want to add these? Could I interpret the average in some useful way? So let's try examples of some. Are the given variables categorical or quantitative? So our first one is age. Well, let's think about it. Age, examples of this might be 6. 6 what? 6 years old. Oh, it comes with units, years, or months, 6 months old. Also, an average age that would tell us a kind of how old the middle person is. Now, don't take that word middle too literally. Like, some people are young, some people are old, but that middle person is about 27 or whatever it is. So these things make sense. Adding ages. I'm 6. In 4 years, I'll be. Or I'm 12. How much older am I than my sister who's 7? There are reasons we might want to add and subtract ages. So this is quantitative. Now our next one is area code. Remember, area codes are those 3 numbers, not that it matters, that go in front of a phone number, at least in America. This is our area code. Now let's think about it. It is a number, but does it have units? 541 what? 541 telephones? 541 feet? So far as I know, it doesn't have any units. That's a hint that it's not going to be quantitative. Also, if we average these, well, Eugene is 541. I happen to know that Turlock, California has the area code 209. what would we expect if we averaged them? The place halfway between Turlock and Eugene? I bet you that's not going to be the right number. This doesn't make any sense. Averaging them, adding them, subtracting them, they don't really have meaning. So doing that isn't going to help us. And so this is categorical. Excuse me. Easier ones would be like color, red, green, blue, yellow. Those are more obviously categorical because they're not numbers at all. Now shoe size. Shoe size, I'm not going to give you an answer to this because this is the age-old, even statisticians and people who do this for a living don't always agree with each other. There's two sides to this argument. People fall on either side. For example, are there units? I don't think so. I don't think they're inches, especially when they start over after your kids go up to 12 and they start over at 1 again. I don't think there's a unit to them. And can you add them or subtract them? What's the size 6 minus the size 4? Since they're not inches, I don't know what that would mean. Size 6 minus the size 4 is a size 2? I don't think so. But if you think of an average, the middle size foot, that would make sense. So, you don't have to make a decision on this. I'm going to jump on the categorical bandwagon. But really, this one's up to you. I will not ask you this question on a test. We do not, as a people, agree on that answer. So sometimes things get tricky. And on homeworks, I might try to make you expand your thoughts and think about these hard ones. On a test, I am choosing problems that, at least in my mind, are cut and dry, either categorical or quantitative, if you know what to look for. So there should theoretically be a right answer on any test or quiz problem. So, important things to note, and we'll repeat this throughout the term. When you want to look at some data, you've collected data, you want to know about it, the first thing you should always do is graph it. Because if you don't know what your data looks like, you can make bad choices on how to interpret it. So we're going to start chapter 1 with how to look at graphs. Now, real quick terminology before we look at some graphs. Distribution of a variable, gives all values of the variable and how often each value occurs, either as a count or as a percent. So for example, I could say I have 32 red shirts in my closet and 75 green shirts in my closet, and that would be a distribution of colors of shirts in my closet. Or I could say 30% of my shirts are black and 70% are white. That's count, actual numbers, versus percent, part of the whole. So a distribution gives all the values your variable can take and how often they take them. Now, the easiest way to give this is either with a table or a graph. We're not going to do some tables right now. Hopefully you can figure out a table. We're going to talk about graphs today. Now, whether your data is categorical or quantitative changes your choices of graphs. So let's start with categorical variables today. We're going to mostly do quantitative in this class, but let's look at this for a second anyway. Our first type of graph for categorical variables is a pie chart, and hopefully everybody's vaguely familiar with what they look like. They're a circle with pieces cut up for different spots. And there's some rules that need to be true in order to use a pie chart for your data. First thing we must have is that your data must include all parts of the whole. When you are to graph something, you can't be missing a piece of the whole because the pie is like 100%. If you only have like 75% of the whole, then that's not going to make a good pie. Also, they need to all be of a single whole. You can't have some people from one whole and some people from another. And rule number 2, your different groups can't overlap. You can't have some people in 2 different groups. So basically, these 2 ideas come down to each individual must be placed into exactly one group. So let's look at an example. Below is the pie chart for the makeup of a local high school student population. The population is made up of freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Does this pie chart include everyone? Well, so far as I know, everybody who attends a high school is either a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior. Maybe it's their second year as a senior. They still count as a senior. That's okay. So by breaking them up into freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, we have made sure that everybody fits, that everybody in the whole school is included. There's no one we're missing out. Is anybody in 2 groups? So far as I know, nobody can be counted as both a freshman and a sophomore at the same time. You pick one and you go with it. So this does fulfill the requirements of a pie chart. Notice sometimes we will make a group called, say, other, when the little groups just are too tedious to write them all in, and that's a nice way to fix it and make sure you include everybody. You're like, and the rest. So let's look at some examples of other kinds of data. We asked college students what kind of technology they used. Each person checked the box for any type they had. And we asked about cell phones, laptops, and tablets. So of the people we asked, 86% of them had cell phones, 62% of them had laptops, and 24% of them had tablets. Can we use a pie chart for this data? Explain. Well, the first thing we notice, back in our previous example, I'm going to go back for just a sec, if we added up all the percents, 50% were freshmen, 23% were seniors, 17 sophomore, 10 juniors, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, that is 100%. Here, if we add these up, we can see very quickly that this is more than 100%. So something has gone wrong, and let's ask ourselves those questions. Did I include everybody here? Are we guaranteed everybody is in one of these 3 groups? We are not, because what about the people who have none of these? Where are they in this? They've been left out. Now, we could fix that by recording who didn't check anything and putting another little group down below, but this still isn't going to be good for a pie chart because some people fit in more than one group. Some people have cell phones and laptops, or cell phones and tablets, or maybe even cell phones, laptops, and tablets. And so some people are in more than one group. And because of this, we cannot use a pie chart. So, what do we do if we can't make a pie chart? The only other graph we're going to learn for categorical data is called a bar graph, and hopefully we are all fairly familiar with these as well. So, a couple things to note about a bar graph. Categories go across the bottom, and each category is going to get 1 bar. The heights of the bar are going to be the percent of the count or the count for that category. So if red shirts were 50% of my closet, the height of the red bar would be 50%. The next thing we know, this is kind of just an aesthetic thing, but you'll see why in a little while, we always put spaces between our bars. Those bars are not related to each other. We just separate them by just a little bit of a space. It doesn't have to be too much. And not required, but generally we organize them so that the highest bars are first and the lowest bars are last, highest to lowest. So let's look at it really quick. Does order of the bars matter? Not really. I mean, if I want to make the bars red, green, blue, yellow, and you want to make them blue, yellow, red, green, that doesn't affect our data. It might be easy to read where the highest bar is first and the lowest bar is last, but reorganizing that horizontal axis where your colors are is not going to change any meaning on that graph. And that's going to become important when we compare to some quantitative graphs. So let's make a bar graph for that previous tech problem where students had cell phones, laptops, and tablets. And I've actually made it for you, so let's just take a look. So each category has a bar: cell phones, laptop, tablets, and the height of the bar roughly tells us the percent. 50% is in the middle, 100% on top. So we can remember our percents were 86, 62, and 24. Can we see that here? Well, we can't see exactly 86. If we wanted to, sometimes people will, I don't even remember the numbers anymore, 62 and 24. Sometimes they'll write the numbers on the top just to help us read it, but we could just eyeball it by looking at this and saying, okay, this bar is just a little below the 90 bar. Notice if it's 50, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So we might guess somewhere around 85. The 62 bar seems to be a little over 60, so I would guess 60 something. And this bar way over here is roughly between 20 and 30. Now it didn't line up perfectly for 24. If you want to, say, use graph paper, it would be easier to draw really nice graphs, but it's still close enough that we could get an idea. So this is what a bar graph looks like. Please note that I did not put a lot of time and effort into this picture. I didn't use graph paper. I just made a line across, a line up, some tick marks. When making graphs by hand for this class, you shouldn't have to do too many, but if you do, you should not take more than, say, a minute or two to make a graph. If you were taking 20 minutes on one graph, you're allowed to do that, but maybe you're trying a little too hard. Make it look reasonable, make it look so I can read it. Don't do this, like, it should be kind of pretty, but don't try too hard. What can we tell from this bar graph? Now, I could answer a million things to that answer. I won't ask you that in a question because it's too open-ended, but let's look. We can say, okay, I can get an estimate of what percent each one has, but I can also say things like these cell phone users are, more people have cell phones than other things. Or I could say, the laptop users seem about twice as big as the tablets. So twice as many people have laptops compared to tablets. Or the cell phones are almost 3 to 4 times as big as the tablets. So you can do comparisons, you can try to read the numbers, you can put them in order from who is the most to who is the least. Lots of things you can read off here. Nothing too specific other than comparing and looking at the numbers. So you can do comparisons, highest, lowest, reading, numbers. Now, if these were counts and not percent, I could literally count how many in each group and then get a total for the whole group, or figure out where half was, do some random stuff. But again, nothing too complicated. So let's do another example. Let's look at the percent of college students who live in the dorms. Now, this is a good time for a word of warning. Every example I make up in these lectures is completely made up. None of this is actually true information, so please don't go share this information with others. According to my pretend college, 82% of freshmen live in the dorms, 73% of sophomores, 30% of juniors, and 4% of seniors. Should we use a pie chart or a bar graph for this? Why? Draw the appropriate graph. So right off again, we see that there's too many. So is there overlap? Is that what the question is? back when we looked at tablets, cell phones, and laptops, people could be in more than one group. Can people be more in one group now? Well, no, you can't be a freshman and a sophomore. So notice, these aren't actually not part of a whole. We're not saying 82% of these people are freshmen, 73% of these people are sophomores. We're saying 82% of freshmen, 73% of sophomores. These are all from different wholes. We are saying 82% of freshmen live in the dorms. 73% of sophomores live in the dorms. So if we had to do pie charts, the best we could do is make a pie chart for freshmen, a pie chart for sophomores, a pie chart for juniors, and a pie chart for seniors. But that wouldn't be particularly helpful. So really, this is going to be better with a bar graph. And now we want to draw one. I'm going to actually take the time to draw this for you, just to show you how much time we should be spending. So we make our axes, and I have 4 groups. They are coincidentally given to me in order from largest to smallest already. So freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. I'm going to call it F, SO for sophomore, J for junior, SE for senior. And always check your numbers before you're making your tick marks. My numbers go all the way up to 82. So maybe I'll actually start at 100%, and you can either write the percents there or you can just write percent over here. And it's a good idea to give titles. So this is live in dorms. So halfway between 0 and 100 is 50. Halfway between that is 25. Halfway between 50 and 100 is 75. Notice I didn't go by tens. It doesn't really matter how you go by as long as you're consistent. So freshman was 82. 82 is, okay, maybe I wish I was in tens now. 75 is here. So I'd say, yeah, maybe there. And notice, did I really try really hard on that? No, I didn't. Sophomores are 73. Oh, that one's easy. It's just a little bit below 75. 30% for juniors. That's going to be a tad above the 25. And seniors is 4%. That's going to be barely up there at all. That might even be too big, but that's okay. I don't care. And because it's convenient, I can add some color. But that is totally optional. If you want people to pay attention to your stuff and read it, color is good. In real life, people don't look at tables, people don't read anything. They look at graphs and they look at colors. So if you want someone to pay attention to your work, make it a graph and make it in color. So that is our graph. No big deal. And that is the end of this video. We will next do part 2, which is talking about graphs of quantitative data. Have a good day.